Cool. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the March meeting of the ACES Committee of Manhattan Community Board 4. We are meeting virtually, which we have permission to do from the governor, and we have quite a packed agenda tonight, so we're going to jump right into it. We kick off every month with an open session. Anyone who would like can speak for 2 minutes on the topic of their choosing. When folks have had a chance to share their thoughts through the open session, we will move on to a presentation from the PTA from PS51 about the school's funding needs. Our third item on the agenda is a presentation on the Open Streets program. We originally had said that we were going to have an update from the team at CHEKPEDS. That agenda item is going to actually be bumped back until April. So if you are in attendance and you would like to speak during the open session, now is the best time to let us know that. You can show us by raising your hand, which should be an option you see in the bottom panel of your Zoom screen. I see Josephine has her hand raised, so we'll start with her and then we'll take anyone else until we see nobody else. Josephine, you have 2 minutes whenever you begin.
Thank you. I had a chance to visit the new Performing Arts Center at World Trade Center. So I just wanted to, well, I said I would report back. Actually, the person who was giving the tours, Jesse, you may know her, Jenna Crispont, she used to work for CB4. So anyway, yeah, so they're giving tours right now, and they're looking for any performing arts organizations and in all districts, if they might be interested in going down there and, you know, finding out how they can use their theater space. And what they're really trying to do is make this space accessible for everyone. Where the ground that the space is built on, I think 1,100 people actually lost their lives on that specific ground. So they're trying their best to ensure that this is really a public space for everyone to use, to utilize. And they're really making a push to find arts organizations that traditionally haven't been able to, perform their works in other theaters to try to, apply for whatever they can down there. So I just wanted to let everyone know that they exist. And if anyone is interested in touring the space, I know that they're going to be doing a lot more in the spring, but you can reach out to me and I can put you in touch with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Josephine. It looks like we have at least one other hand currently in the attendees, and it looks like Tamara also raised her hand. Why don't we let Tamara go ahead since she's already able to speak? And Jesse, if you wouldn't mind bringing over Mike Freeman, we can have Mike on deck. And then Tamara, one more thing before you start. If you just joined us and you would like to speak during the open session, the way to let us know is by using the raised hand feature, which should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. 2 minutes. Go ahead, Tamara.
Thanks so much, Kit. I had promised all of you that I was going to give updates on partnering with the Manhattan response team on hosting. The Shed has been hosting these open arms tourist fairs, which are both new families seeking asylum, but really all families in sort of temporary housing in the city. The first one we did had 500 people. The one that we did back in January went up to like 1,000 people. We're trying to really commit to doing them quarterly, but I did want to, so we're kind of anticipating 1,000 people or more. It will be in our largest space, the McCourt. The date is Saturday, April 1st. And I know that some people wanted to possibly volunteer. We're always looking for people also, for everyone to volunteer and to help us out. But also those that speak Spanish that's particularly really critical that we have as many volunteers that speak Spanish as possible. But Jesse, I will definitely send some information to you in the board office where you can share that. But did want all of you to know it's as all of you know, it's an ongoing urgent need in our community, and we're trying to see what we could do. And other culturals have also been really stepping up. I know that the Whitney's also looking to see how they can participate and join with us on April 1st. So I'll send more information, but did want to give you the heads up as soon as we had confirmed the date. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I saw, in addition to Mike Freeman coming over from attendees, Priscilla Serrano raised her hand and was brought over. So we'll go to Mike first, and then Priscilla will be next. Mike, your 2 minutes starts whenever you would like. If you'd like to come off, if you'd like to show your face, we'd love to see it. But if you're more comfortable keeping your camera off, go ahead and just come off mute and start talking.
Hi, I'm Mike Freeman. I'm a musician and band leader and producer. I've lived in Hell's Kitchen for 40 years, most of that time at Manhattan Plaza, but I also lived on 9th Avenue and 37th Street for a number of years in the middle of the crack epidemic. So I've been there for all of the new high-rises that have gone up and seen all of the events that are happening at these building complexes and so on and so forth. And one of the things I've been very frustrated with is that local groups are not being represented in any of the programming. And I'm talking about Hudson Yards on the plaza. I'm talking about Bella Abzug Park. I'm talking about Worldwide Plaza. There are a number of places where music events are happening and local groups are not being represented. I remember going to a meeting, a community board 4 meeting, when they were talking about bids coming into the Hudson Yards. And one of the stipulations was that they were going to use local artists. And I haven't seen that. And so I'm here tonight to see, to propose advocating for that, or how I can advocate for that. And if I can't advocate for getting local groups on already existing events, how do I advocate for producing my own event of local artists at one of these venues with funding? And that's what I wanted to say tonight.
Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing. Do you have Jesse Bodine's contact information?
Just an email address.
He is our district manager and sort of coordinates across all of us. If you wouldn't mind shooting him an email, perhaps he could connect you with the arts folks. We're broken out into subcommittees: education, arts, and street life. And maybe someone from our committee could follow up with you that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Priscilla, you're up next.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Here I'm advocating for Garden Angel School. So again, my name is Priscilla Serrano. So first, let me thank you for the opportunity to speak at this forum. I am a parent of a first grader at Garden Angel School, as well as an alumni, class of 93. As you may be aware, on February 15th, the Office of the Superintendent of the Archdiocese has decided to close 12 Catholic schools around the tri-state area. 12 of them will not reopen for the new school year of the after this school year. Garden Angel, if you do not know, is located on 21st Street and 10th Avenue. It's been serving the educational needs of the community for over 100 years. It's a school grounded in challenging academic programming, while providing its students with invaluable opportunity to explore their faith and moral values. A community of parents and supporters have worked together on a solid proposal to save the school, including but not limited to a 1-year program as a school and the community work together to long-term sustainability in the growth of the school environment, both from student enrollments and financial responsibility. We have over 75 families joining on this cause, and we've been actively trying to find solutions to support the school and to make sure the doors remain open. We have repeatedly called, emailed, messaged on social media with the Archdiocese to no avail. They seem to refuse to acknowledge us or to meet with us. Garden Angel School is the last Catholic parochial elementary school in the Chelsea community. Most notably, 2 school closures happened. The first one in 2006 with St. Columba, and then St. Bernard in 2001, leaving Garden Angel as its last standing school in the Chelsea community. Garden Angel closure completes the elimination of a Catholic elementary school on the Manhattan's west side through 70th Street, leaving an entire community and district without any quality faith-based education. Additionally, families have been adversely impacted by the timing of this unexpected announcement, with leaving us parents with less than 4 months to the end of the school year to find suitable solutions for the next academic year. The announcements also came during a time that we were on a winter break, as well as all public school deadlines in our neighborhood had passed. So they're giving us no options to go to some neighboring schools as well. So the Archdiocese is encouraging our students to go to 2 specific schools, none in the Chelsea community, and again, not viable options based on tuition and accessibility. We are a community of parents, alumni, community members seeking support and guidance on how we can either save our school or give the parents that live in this community options in the neighborhood. We have created a website, friendsofguardianangel.com. We have a petition. We're trying to stay active and trying to, again, find viable solutions to keep the school open and to help support the families that are in the community and what their best school options are. Again, just thank you for your time. Just wanted to bring this cause to your attention.
Thank you for coming and
Am I
sharing.
able to ask a question or not right now?
I would like to ask one too.
Why don't we then wait until new business, as this is going to turn into a discussion topic? What I was going to propose was we could take this up under new business. So I don't know if you're able to stay on. It's unpredictable exactly when that will be, but later in the meeting. This can be taken up in new business and or be something that you connect with folks from our education subcommittee around. Just to give you transparently an idea of what our role can be. As a community board, we can write letters, we can advocate for funding, we can lobby local elected officials. In order for us to write a letter, which is what we sort of do most typically, we would need to have some committee discussion on the topic. And so if you're able to stick around, people would like to ask you questions.
Okay.
We need to get to our planned agenda before that.
No problem. I can stick around.
Much appreciated. All right. I don't see any other raised hands. So if you would like to speak, your opportunity to do so is rapidly dwindling. Please show us by using the raised hand sign in the next couple of seconds, or we are going to move on to our second item on the agenda, which I believe is the team from PS 51. Going once, going twice, sold. All right. Yes, we are going to hear from the PTA from PS 51. I don't know if you all have a presentation or just planning on speaking. I see some nodding heads. You should be able to screen share, but if you cannot, Jesse will get you sorted out. And after your presentation, if the committee has questions for you, we'll give them a chance to ask, and then we'll open up to the public to ask any questions they might have as well.
Let me just go ahead and share my screen.
Sure.
There we go. All right, we're in. Can you see me okay? Thank you. So as you mentioned, we're from PS 51, myself and our PTA president, Kulani Jenkins. Kulani, can you give a wave and a hello?
Hi, thank you for having us.
So for the many years, we've been an incredibly diverse school, and we're super proud of that. This pandemic has really done a number on us. Before the pandemic, our number of students was 467, and right now we're at 475. So one would think that, you know, we're sitting pretty. We've got the exact same number of students, but actually, that's a big change. We've lost a tremendous number of students, and now we have an additional 125-ish asylum-seeking students enrolled, which represents about 1/4 of our student body. So in addition to having, we've always been a Title I school, we're now looking at numbers of upwards of 50% of our students fall into that Title I category. So between losing a lot of families that had more financial means, and then gaining, you know, a whole new faction of students who are really stressed for resources, it's kind of the perfect storm for our PTA. you're probably thinking, New York City schools get funding based on warm bodies. It's the fair student funding formula. Everyone's probably familiar with it. So of course, the school has received additional funding to help us now that our numbers have boosted back up this year from our asylum seeking friends that have joined us. So yes, our school budget has been beefed back up, but those dollars don't trickle down to PTA budgets. So for instance, our pre-pandemic annual student fund goal was about 25,000. And we had, varying levels of success. And I just love to point out 25,000 for us is it's a big deal goal. Whereas there's public schools on the Upper West Side that have recently just, achieved a $2 million fundraising goal for the year, and the year's not even over, which is, to me, that's just astonishing. So this year we lowered our annual student fund, our ASF goal, down to about 12,000 with hopes of, getting some grants, maybe some corporate sponsorship. We're not even close to being on track for meeting that goal. There's a few reasons. It really stems from us not being physically able to enter the building for many, since the pandemic. Until just a few weeks ago, when the vaccine mandate was lifted by New York City schools, no parents were allowed in the building. Last year, we had just a few skeleton crew parents doing volunteering in the cafeteria, in the library. There's a team of 6 of us that are just personally rotating to keep the library open. So we're trying to make sure that the kids don't lose the resources that they have and that the PTA is there for them. But that not being allowed in the building created a huge barrier for engagement. We have trouble, building a community back up. We've lost so many families. Just by having, sidewalk celebrations and outdoor events. And as you know, we are limited in the amount of good weather that we can even do these outdoor events. So, September and October, and then May and June are our key window of time. So it puts a big burden on our PTA to try and do all the fundraising in just a matter of 2 months on the front end and 2 months on the back end, where we actually have people in attendance and we can, now finally get into the school. All of that comes down to our PTA fundraising means next year we might not have the money for, all these incredible programs that we help subsidize. For pre-K, it's Art Farm. Grade, 1 is Bricks for Kids. Grade 2, our second graders get to go to Carnegie Hall and do the Musical Explorers performance, which is an incredible experience. Grade 3 also participates in that Carnegie Hall. We've got Story Pirates in grade 4. We support Rosie's Theater Kids for our 5th graders. That's in this presentation, it's dancing classrooms, but Rosie's Theater Kids, and we love that they're right here in our community. So our PTA dollars are being spent right here in our backyard. And then there's other things that we pay for, for our book fair. There's a lot of money that goes into that. Class photos, the school carnival, making sure that our 5th graders get a terrific experience before they graduate. All in all, our annual student fund is there for every single student in the school. And right now, we really need some help bridging the gap, because we know that this summer we'll get another wave of asylum seekers, and those friends are going to have a lot of resource needs, and we're not going to have a full PTA budget to work with to even do the activities that we typically do on an annual basis. So we're here tonight to ask for your help, whether that be, you have new ideas for us on how we can bridge the gap, any organizations that you're aware of for donation matching, any suggestions that you have, any way that you can help support our PTA in making sure that these kids don't feel the difference that the PTA dollars aren't there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'd love, Kulani, if you want to jump in and add anything here.
I mean, we could see if there's any questions first.
Am I right about we're right around the 50% mark for Title I? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No,
and
I was going to say, I think I see David has a question.
I think Leslie actually raised her hand first, and so
Oh,
we'll go to
I'm sorry, I
Leslie,
didn't see
and then
you.
we'll go to David. And if anyone else has anything they want to add after that, we'll take them as they come.
First off, thank you, Leslie, and Kulani. We wish more PTAs would come to Community Board 4, just so we know what's going on. But I think, guys, we talked about this. Kit, I don't know, do you remember? We talked about this maybe a year or two ago. I don't know if we ever kind of wrote a letter or did anything past discussion on it, but Leslie highlighted a super, super important thing that I don't know if some people know who don't have kids. Charlie, you probably know. And a lot of these programs are dependent on how much funds you raise. And you mentioned that an Upper West Side school, I have a friend who goes to an Upper West Side school, and their Upper West Side school literally raised $1 million in a year. And that funds all, like the dance, the yoga, all the extracurriculars that maybe some people would think are regular school programs that are actually, baseline. They're not base. None of these programs are baseline programs. Like baseline is reading, math, gym. Those are the baseline programs. All these other programs that other schools have, at least public schools, is because of their PTA or outside funded, most of them, which leads me into a bigger bite of the apple is, I think, Kit, what I was saying, we were talking about PTA sharing. Do you remember that conversation we might have had about PTA sharing? It was such a big topic and no one kind of knew how to navigate it. Josephine might have some thoughts on it. And I don't know if it specifically is related to PS 51. And I know it's a bigger discussion further down the road, but I just want to bring that up as maybe something we can tackle in the future, or maybe have some sort of further discussion on it. I don't know, but I'll let everyone talk about this specifically. And then
Was there a question for the PS 51 PTA that you wanted to ask, Leslie, or just that comment?
No, just the comment about how I support the important note about the funds or, PTA funds are dependent. I'm sorry, but let me flip that. Programs are funded on PTA funding.
That's an ongoing thing that we have to educate all of our families about constantly and remind them that their child is benefiting from the PTA. So whether they choose to donate or not, their child is getting to go to Carnegie Hall or whatever grade corresponds. So it's a constant awareness opportunity for us to continually educate our student families.
Yeah. We'll go to David and then Josephine and then Katie.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you all for your great work that you're doing. It's certainly appreciated in the community. I'm sure the children appreciate it. I was going to suggest, aside from taking them to Carnegie Hall, which is a great idea, maybe taking them on tours to the United Nations. I remember I took a children's tour when I was in elementary school, especially since you have children who are families or asylum seekers. That would really help. And also, I was going to suggest, I don't know, maybe you might have already done this already, I might be redundant, but applying for grants like from the Ford Foundation or different foundations, especially since you have, I think you said 25% of your population are asylum seekers. You might be able to get some resources from there. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud as when you were speaking, but and I wanted to commend the great work that you're doing. And if I could help you, I'm a member of the United Nations Association of America, which is totally separate, but if I could help you with that, you'll let me know with the UN tours. I'll try to, but I know that they do have grade school tours.
David, I love that idea. Kulani, I think we should pitch that for our 5th grade field trip.
Yes, we just need to find someone to sponsor the buses and yes, it is.
Where there's a will, there's a way. So David, I'll get
Absolutely.
in touch with you.
Thank you.
And you reminded me, not only Ford Foundation, but Rockefeller Foundation is one we need to send a letter to as well.
Yeah, we used to have a grant writing committee on the PTA, but we've really just become a skeleton crew. We're almost like down to like just 6 core parents. So, yes, grant writing is on my list of things to do.
Same.
It's a full-time job to do grant writing for a school.
Yeah.
So I commend you, Kulani and Leslie, for the work that you're doing. I was actually, working with your principal prior to Stephanie about trying to get grant funding for the school. So this has been a long time going. And I just want to really thank you all for everything that you're doing for all of your students, all the asylum seekers. I mean, this has just been, as you say, the perfect storm. So in regards to the PTA sharing of funds that Leslie mentioned, when I was on the CEC, we were working on this, way back when, de Blasio was still the mayor. There's a clause in the chancellor regulations that say that PTAs can only share money in case of emergency issues, like if they're during Superstorm Sandy. I know that some PTAs shared funds with other PTAs, and that's it. And we said to the mayor at that time, something that could really help a lot of our schools. We're not saying that schools have to share, but if they wanted to, there should be a way that schools can share, not just for emergency funding, but for so many of the programs that you've already mentioned. So, there was a lot of back and forth about it. The end result, nothing ever happened. But I wasn't, touch with Councilman Botcher's office about this. And, maybe this is something that we could pick up again, at least try and see what happens with the new chancellor and see if there could be any movement on it. I'm certainly willing to look into that. But I just wanted to let that's where it stands now. You are a 501c3, so there really is no reason why, if say we have, a few schools in our district that I don't know what they're raising now, but prior to the pandemic, they were raising $800,000 to $1 million a year. So, and they were actually willing at this point years ago and saying, hey, if there's something that we can do for other schools, let us know. But they weren't allowed to do anything, which is such a shame. But we can, look into that and see if there's anything, any movement we can make on that. But thanks again for coming and sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a really interesting idea. I didn't know that was ever something that was discussed or on the table.
We're going to go to Katie and then Maria and then Charlie. And then if we don't see any of their hands, we'll check with folks from the public and see if they have any questions before we close out discussion on this.
Thanks, Kalani and Leslie. And I spent 13 years being on the PTA of my kids' school, so I know well that it's a lot of work. And as you say, it ends up being just a sort of a few core people. So that can be tricky. Just had a couple of questions. I know you said you're a Title I school, and I know some schools that are Title I, they seem to have like a lot of grants and partnerships and sort of exciting opportunities. And I guess it is sort of school specific or principal specific. I guess if, the principal's on fire and really good at fundraising or something, that's awesome. But I'm just wondering if there's anywhere within the Title I structure of the DOE that they might be able to help give advice about, because I think a lot of corporations or whatever, they're interested in having some sort of partnership or, giving money. So that could be one possibility. So I think just asking at the DOE in the Title I group to see if there's any thought about, what kind of grants might be available to your school. Another thought I had, we have a bunch of West Side corporations and they even do sort of donations and things. And this might be a place where Jesse might be able to help us, but because Jesse, I know that there is a group that sort of thinks about ways to support activities and schools and things on the West Side. And I don't know if we can put the PTAs, all the PTAs in our district, in touch with them and let them know their financial needs, if that would be productive or helpful. I do know on more of a national level that there have been different places in different states that have tried PTA sharing, and that it has not seemed to have ultimately been super successful. So yeah, it does seem like that's something we should try and figure out better. And of course, the schools that are raising the most money on the PTAs are not Title I schools, right? And so they, or at least I know several that aren't Title I schools that have raised a lot of money. But you're right, there needs to be some way that schools can support other schools, and not be limited by regulation. But anyway,
You're inspiring me to create a council of PTA.
Well, but in fact, as you know, there is, right? At least like in the high schools, there is it's called the President's Council. It's all the PTA presidents of all the high schools in Manhattan. And I happened to be president of it several years ago. But then there are, in every district, there are PTA president groups, right? It's the district leadership team and that sort of thing. And so they may be able to help with ideas too, because this is certainly something we've heard from other schools.
My end, or is Katie frozen for other folks too?
Katie is frozen.
Zoom always gets the worst moments. We'll go to Maria, and if Katie comes back, we'll let her finish.
I was just going to ask if Leslie, if you guys are a what is this called? Do you have 501c3 status?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do so. That's always excellent. I was not on the PTA as long as Katie, but at my son's school, and he actually attended 111. I was PTA co-president also for a little while. One of the things that we applied for was, I think we could have applied for, sometimes there's funding that the city gives to nonprofits. I don't remember what it's called. I don't even remember if we applied, but something that we did do. I think, Matt, you were working with Corey at the time. That's how long ago it was. We applied for discretionary funding. And that is it. But I think other people who spoke before me gave good suggestions, including collaborating with other schools. And Katie looks like she's back. And that was all I was going to say. So I guess Katie wants to finish where she was.
Sorry about that. I lost all Wi-Fi.
We lost you right around, you were saying something about many other schools.
Yeah, we've heard from other schools that are getting asylum seekers that they're all having the same problem, right? That when you have families coming in with less financial resources, then by definition, the PTA is really impacted. And I think that this is something that we, maybe with the city, we can try and sort of think about how we can make an argument that that the schools that are getting, that have more asylum seekers, it's not just the school budget that needs help, but it's also the programs that are typically paid for by the PTA, that the PTAs are going to have less money. So we can try and give that some thought too.
Yeah, because we need more community building than ever. Just getting in person and doing things together and having fun together. And even when we do things like that, like our wonderful multicultural potluck that we do in the fall, we have more families that frankly need food. So the food that we would typically buy for an event now, we need to double. So even just doing community events that have nothing to do with fundraising, that we're not trying to raise money, we're just trying to build community, even those are more expensive for us now. So yeah, I mean, even things like just partnering with local businesses that might want to donate food, connections to people who are open to doing things like that are helpful. We try before events to go. I literally walk into local businesses and talk to them and hand them a letter, and sometimes people will give and sometimes they won't, but small businesses are struggling as well. So
yeah, the perfect storm again.
Wait, I just wanted to add one more thing that I forgot to mention, was that also I think it's important also to tap into the resources that you do have, which include the parents, even if they are not speaking English or understand some English. And I remember when I was doing it, one of the things we advocated for is time, treasure, or talent. You don't have to give money, right? You can't always give money, but you can help in other ways, and that would be talent or time.
Mhm. Definitely.
All right, unless Katie, there was anything else that you didn't get to, we're going to go to Charlie and then Aurora, and then I think we are done for the committee.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say that my wife, Cody Lundquist, is one of the co-chairs of fundraising for PS2 and 2. She just finished doing a big auction. They've had a lot of the same struggles that you guys have had. PS2 and 2 has also had a lot of the asylum seekers, and changing demographics of the school has made fundraising challenging. But Leslie, Cody said she'd love for you to email her, and maybe you guys can brainstorm PTA to PTA, neighborhood PTA to PTA about all the challenges that you're both facing, and trade stories and talk shop.
Perfect. I'll take her to coffee. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Aurora, did you still want to ask a question or make a comment?
No, I got confused with PS51 and PS2 and 2. So no, but thank you for all the great work you're doing.
If anyone from the public would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and Jesse can bring you over. Give it a couple of seconds. All right. Thank you both so much for coming and sharing with us about what is going on with your PTA. Hopefully you got some good suggestions and made some helpful connections. If you want to come back and share with us or make another ask or another suggestion, please don't be strangers. We appreciate your time and really hope that you all can continue to spread the word as well as bring in more funds for the school.
Thank you so much. I look forward to circling back before the school year is over to tell you about some of our wins and celebrate those. So thanks for the great ideas. Good night.
Thank you.
Hey, can I jump, Leslie? And just a reminder, so just to remember, our budget cycle, right, is September. We have to start creating our statement of district needs and budget requests. So I know that doesn't always work. time-wise doesn't always work out with when the school budget is and when you guys get it. But if there is something you want us to put in for long-term, for, if you're applying for discretionary funding or anything that the school is going for, to DOE and SCA or anything along those lines, to even to a council member, please let us know. And then, that's something we can circle back on in September and October.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling that out, Jesse. We are going to move on to our third planned agenda item, and then we have at least one item in new business that we expect to cover. But the next thing is the folks from Open Plan are going to present on the Open Streets program. I might be garbling some of those words, so I'll just stop talking and let the person who knows what they're talking about take over.
Awesome. I'm going to share screen really quickly, if that's okay with you all. Amazing. It's always very scary to share screen during a meeting. There we go. I'm going to present. Great. Can everybody see this? Awesome. Great. So I'm part of Open Plans. So Open Plans is a New York City based organization, and our goal is to create public spaces throughout New York City. And this is through organizing, through advocacy, through legislative effects, and through cultivating an atmosphere that is really conducive to having new public spaces. And we've been very historically Upper West Side based and Manhattan based in our focus, but we're branching out across Manhattan and across all the different boroughs. I'm focusing largely on Queens, but also branching out My role specifically is a school streets coordinator. If you've ever heard of school streets, they're super similar in concept to what open streets are, except they're specific for schools. Schools are some of the areas in the city with the largest amount of traffic incidents and injuries, specifically at pickup and drop off. If you've ever dropped your kid off at school in the morning or picked them up after school, you know that's really congested, really busy. And so in order to kind of respond to this in a kind of temporary way, the DOT has created this program, which allows schools at no cost to close off the street with barricades right before drop off in the morning and take the barricades off right after pickup in the afternoon. So using existing support, most schools already have a teacher or an aide or a school security officer waiting at the doors at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. And so now they have just the additional role of putting actually a physical barricade there. So it doesn't have that much additional infrastructural needs for schools. And it also provides benefits, not just in like decongesting, pick up and drop off, and also making it safer and, you know, making sure there are no traffic incidents between cars and students, but it also provides additional benefits. Like some schools have used that space for recess or for lunch or for outdoor classrooms. Some schools have used that for like even broader benefits like community events. A lot of the Jackson Heights schools that have this large stretch of open space use that to host like free vaccination clinics or voter registration or just events to like introduce parents to teachers and their broader school community. So benefits with traffic, broader benefits as well, ways of getting the neighborhood involved in the school community at large. There are also a lot of schools that use it for like bike and fitness events and just getting kids more comfortable with their neighborhoods. Opportunities also to have older students involved in leadership opportunities. At some schools in Greenpoint, they have like fifth graders take the hands of first graders and walk them down the street and make everybody more comfortable using the space altogether. How the program works, what we do is reach out to, what I do is, and the whole organization, but my specific role is to reach out to schools and to ask them, is this something that you're interested in doing? The DOT has so much on their plate. And so one thing that we found ourselves super helpful in is reaching out to individual schools and letting them know about this program because it's such a benefit, but not a lot of schools know about it because the schools that do know about it get really excited. There are very few exceptions of schools who aren't interested in the program. But so once a school is excited, the application is pretty simple and we're happy to do the entire application for schools. It's just telling a little bit more information to the DOT about the school, like, is it near businesses? Is it near neighbors? Is it near a big street? What do they want to use the open street for? Mostly for traffic, or do they want to use it for like, maybe they need more space for play because they don't have a gym like many schools don't. Maybe they're co-located and they just have too many students and they need the overflow space, particularly with COVID too. That's been really helpful. We also can do things like speak at PTAs and answer Q&As for parents. Go to pick up and drop off and explain this to parents so they know the change in the system. Brainstorm activities with admin. We've written op-eds for schools. We've talked to neighbors and small businesses and said, hey, this is happening, and it's a really exciting thing that you can take advantage of. Another thing that we haven't had that much opportunity to do, but that we're really excited to have a school take us on the opportunity is host a design session for schools. They're doing really cool visioning for students at a bunch of schools in the Bronx, PS 72 and PS 32. And we want to get kids involved in this processes too, because it's super exciting. And we're really just excited to offer this to any schools. So if you have a school in CB4 that your kids go to, that you're a teacher at, that you're an admin at, and that you're interested in potentially taking advantage of this resource, I'd love to connect with you, write the application for your school, talk to your school's admin, talk to you and brainstorm it, as well as answer any other questions that you have about the program. I see somebody has their hand raised, would love to talk more.
Go to David first and then to Charlie.
Thank you for your great work. I'm a big fan of open plans. I was at your party last week, so I'm a little prejudiced. I know there's one school that I know personally that on 20th or 21st between 8th and 9th, they actually have the close off the street for the whole day. But what I'm thinking, if this is okay with the committee, maybe we can find out all the schools and contact the PTAs that be in contact with you to apply for this program for all the schools in our district. Kit, does that sound viable, or that's way above our bandwidth?
I think publicizing the opportunity is something that would be very in line with many other things that we've done. I don't know that we would want to try to twist the arm of PTAs to reorganize their priorities based on what we think, but definitely sharing the information that this is an awesome program and take a look and see if it's the right fit feels like something that we do frequently.
That all sounds awesome. And also thanks for being a supporter of Open
No,
Play.
I love what you're doing. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. And also, if you have contacts of PTAs that you would like me to reach out to, I can totally reach out on just my organization's behalf and say, this is a really exciting program and we'd love to provide you with resources if that makes more sense for you all.
Charlie?
Thank you, Sabina, for presenting with us. I'm also a big fan of open plans, and I've also biked 34th Avenue, open street quite a bit during school time and seen all those kids out there, and it's a gorgeous sight to see. My wife, as I said earlier in the last topic, is on the PTA for PS2 and 2, and she and I and some other parents have really been hoping to have a school street on our block. We do pick up and drop off on 47th. And we've talked to the 47th Street Block Association, and they're for it. And I believe all the local businesses are for it. The sticking point is just the labor of moving the barricades out. And also, I think it's more than just putting them out at the start of drop off and taking them away. You have to be there for the local pickups for both businesses. And there are some parents who, I would say, unfortunately, drive their children to school. So for them and for teachers who may drive and park on the block, the barricades have to be moved. So it's been a staffing issue. So we have the community support. We just don't have the principal doesn't have someone from the school they can give us who can do that. And right now there's not a parent, I think, who wants to do that every day at pickup and drop off. An option that my wife went to the open plans Zoom you guys had maybe about a month ago, the big informational Zoom on this, and that was helpful. And one thing that she's been trying to do, and I think it's a dead end, but I'm going to mention it anyway, is we have a school crossing guard who stands at 9th Avenue and 47th. And it's helpful to have a crossing guard there, but it would be just as helpful if she was at 8th Avenue and 47th, the other side of the block, because kids come from both sides. And she literally stands in an intersection during pickup and drop off. So she could be the one that moves the barricade, puts it back, adjudicates who can come in, who's a parent or a teacher or a local delivery for business. But I know that my wife had investigated that and was told that, crossing guard assignments are from NYPD and it is what it is and we have no control. So I would love to see citywide, if every school has a crossing guard that's standing at an intersection, if that person could double as barricade monitor, that would be fantastic and I think helpful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would also, first of all, you have my email. I would love to follow up with you further because I have some detailed thoughts about your specific school. We're trying that with PS 118. They have the same issue. They have a crossing guard at 7th. They want it to be on 8th where the school street would be. And we applied for that for the DOT. So fingers crossed on that account and agreed it is true. It is more than just the barricades, 100% the labor issue. But we're trying also with PS 118. They have the same issue where they're like, we want to have this school street. We don't have we're overburdened. Our teachers cannot possibly do more at the school. We have too many students. But what we're trying to do is come up with we have one parent who's a really excited ally at the school and coming up with like a rotating system where there are 16 shifts throughout the week. And when you're walking your dog, and it's also in an area of Brooklyn where there's a lot of public space volunteers. So we're finding some volunteers that are outside of the school community, but want to help out public space. And we'd love to help you brainstorm how to do that for your school. So I'll send my email again. I'll screen share it. But I would love, Charlie, to talk more about this because I think we could potentially brainstorm some solutions together.
Great. All right. I'll follow up with you.
Great.
Katie, and then if I don't see any other hands, I have at least one question.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I just had a question sort of historically for your program. What kind of pushback or opposition have you gotten from businesses or people on sort of neighboring streets or whose traffic patterns change or things get a lot louder for them or whatever? Because I know here on our committee, we've certainly heard that there is a lot of opposition, not to school open streets, but to general open streets. And so I just wondered what has been the sort of the pattern of opposition.
Yeah, that's a great question. People also say that, like, we know there's a ton of pushback to open streets, and none of the schools that I've applied with or even spoken to have had neighbor pushback. I think people are more sympathetic to students than they are to anything else because they're like fourth graders, and it's really hard to be that hater of fourth graders who are just trying to get to school safely. So I think people tend to be a little softer on school streets than they are on open streets. But there are a few cases. I think admin who are applying for school streets tend to also have a really good relationship with their school community, with the businesses around them, because you kind of have to if you have screaming kids every day and like they are businesses. So first of all, it's not kind of like a random thing that's popping up in their neighborhood. Schools usually like send a letter to all the small businesses and neighbors and say like, this is happening. So that's one way that it hasn't sprung up on things and avoided some of those neighbor conflicts. There was one school in Greenpoint, I think it's PS34 if it's the school near the library in Greenpoint. They had some issues because they applied for the school street and they didn't realize it's actually only a 90-day turnaround. So it happens really quick. So they didn't really tell their neighbors about it. And so their neighbor just kind of all of a sudden there were barricades on the street. And in that case, their neighbors were a little upset. And the principal I don't know the full story, but the principal wasn't wanting to have any neighbor conflict, wanted to just have like a really good relationship with the neighbors. So like took the school street down right away. So then parents are a little upset because you don't have this resource that they kind of advocated for. So that I think was the situation. And of course I don't have the full story, but that was a situation where a neighbor conflicts didn't work so well. But I think schools that have told their neighbors proactively that they're applying for this, that it's something that they can use. If you're a business and you want to put some tables during the day, great, go for it. If you're parents and you want to just like walk your dog down the street and you don't have your kids at the school, also great too. That seems to have mitigated any of the conflicts. And of course, like I think as anyone who's at a school, there's always going to be small neighborhood conflicts, but they don't seem to be too severe with school streets because people tend to be sympathetic.
Okay, thank you. And just one last sort of follow-up question. I assume that you have like, I don't know, sort of some parameters, like this probably doesn't work on a street if there's a hospital on the street or like whatever. So I'm just wondering, what are some of those parameters that you guys have in place?
Yeah, those are just their DOT ones, and I'm sure they're ones like we're applying in the DOT, like maybe has some other parameters that we don't know about. But the ones that we do know about are cannot have a bus route on the street. So if there's a bus route that goes down the street, we would say do the adjacent street on the corner because there's obviously 4 streets. So just pick one of the other options. Usually I think like there's some issues if there's an emergency vehicle route, like if it's right next to the school, it's right next to Methodist Hospital. And we're like, apply on the corner. That probably is simpler. But, there has to be one adult on the street at any times to move barricades if an emergency vehicle does want to get by. So that's not been super hard. But it's really bus route, trekking route is the number one thing. And it, they have some issues where it's like, it has to be a full segment. It can't be a segment that's like cut up. So that's the other thing. But usually like POT is willing to creatively brainstorm. We're willing to creatively brainstorm. If a school's interested, we'll try to make it work. I would say don't worry about like knocking out a school of consideration.
Great. Thanks so much.
Not seeing any other hands. So I'll go with my question, which is, you mentioned co-location. Could you just tell me a little bit about how it works? We have a number of school buildings in our district where there's 2, 3, 4, maybe even more schools in the same building. Does one apply and then hopefully the others are on board? Do they all need to consent? How does that get navigated?
That's a great question. We haven't helped any schools that are co-located apply, but we know a bunch of schools that are co-located have been accepted just because like that's a great fit because you're more likely to have it can just pick up and drop off if you're co-located. To our knowledge, you just need one school to apply and they can use it for pickup and drop off. And if the other schools want to get on board, that's great. Obviously, they also have to work with their parents, but we're particularly eager to help brainstorm that and are happy to also reach out to the DOT and see if there's there's more information and parameters around that. But yeah, to my knowledge, only one admin has to reach out. We did it with Thomas Edison recently. They're not quite co-located. They're in Jamaica near 179. They're not co-located, but it's like a complex with like 10 different schools that have the same real space and share some streets. And we only had to apply with one admin. We didn't need to get all the other admin from the schools on board. But we think that if one admin is on board, they will all get excited about this kind of new resource that they could potentially take advantage of. I know that doesn't fully answer your question, but definitely we'll follow up further about if there's more steps for co-located schools, but I don't think there are.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I would imagine that most of the time you are probably right, that if one school among a co-located group wants it, the rest will be on board. But I worry about the scenario where that's not the case. I guess more importantly though, and where my question is coming from, there's a block in our neighborhood that I walk up and down some mornings on the way to dropping off our daughter at school, where there's DOE buildings on both sides of the street. One of the buildings, I think, has multiple high schools. The other has, I believe, 2 middle schools. And there's just so many students coming to school that the sidewalks are basically impassable. And so it makes me think that a solution like this actually would make it much, much safer and much, much easier for pedestrians, both the students and everyone in the neighborhood, to get around during drop off and pickup. But I think one of the other challenges of co-located spaces is it sort of diffuses responsibility for whose job is it to solve something like that. Any other questions before we let Sabina off the hot seat? I'm not seeing any raised hands in the attendees either. All right. Appreciate the very helpful presentation. Echo what a lot of folks said. This is a very cool program, and hopefully many schools around the city, and particularly in our district, will continue to take advantage of it. And don't be shy about coming back and letting us know, especially if you have some schools in our district come online.
I would actually love to. We're trying to get a bunch of schools for the April deadline. So if you'll have me back, I would love to come back soon and give you any updates there. But thanks so much for all your thoughtful questions.
Thank you. All right. Because the CHEKPEDS item has been postponed until next month, we are done with our planned agenda items, and we can move on to new business. Leslie or Maria, did one of you want to suggest something around the Guardian Angel School? Or actually, sorry, Jesse, you raised your hand. Was there something you wanted to say first?
No, I wanted to defer. I just would want to follow up on old business stuff that we talked about last month. So I'll wait till we get there.
New business and then old business, and then we can all go about our evenings. Leslie, Maria, whoever comes off mute first.
Go ahead, Maria.
I was just going to ask, I wanted to ask what were the 2 other schools that the diocese had suggested. I don't know if it was the Archdiocese or Diocese, I forgot what it's called. But I don't know.
Jesse, I know it's a little bit atypical. Could we bring folks from Guardian Angel over and just?
I'm bringing Priscilla. I'm about to bring Priscilla over. Here she is. You're on mute.
Priscilla, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yep, I'm over now.
Will you directly answer that question, Priscilla? Are there other folks from are there other folks from the Guardian Angel community that are in the attendees that we should bring over as well? Or should we direct all our questions to you?
I think you could direct them to me. They've been texting me. So, but yeah, that's fine for now. I think I heard the question around the school. So the school that we're being directed to is Blessed Sacrament, which is on the Upper West 70th schools, and then Epiphany, which is on the east side and the 20th. What's noted about those 2 locations specifically is that when they're clearly outside of our neighborhoods, so there's public transportation you have to take, but also the way those schools are set up, they are 2 elementary school and middle schools, and 2 different campuses. So if you have 2 kids, multiple children, in 2 different campuses, you're kind of forced to choose drop-offs and pickups at the same time. So not, again, conducive to
families.
Yeah, exactly. So
and Guardian Angels, can you remind me what are the grades again?
It's from pre-K 3 through 8th grade.
Pre-K 3 through 8th. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any other questions at the moment.
Leslie, I think you had a question, and then I have a couple questions.
Sure. Thank you for coming again. Were you the one that came last month as well?
Yes.
Or is it your colleague? Thank you so much. So I remember the announcement when the Archdiocese made this big announcement that they can't fund anymore. They don't have enough money, and they were going to close a whole bunch of schools, and they were a bunch of them that were closed. And I saw the list. Kit, I was going to suggest that why don't we reach out to the superintendent and ask him if he would come, or if we can maybe just a informal email on what their reasoning is. I'm sure they're going to come back, say it's a financial decision or whatever they're going to say, but I think maybe we can reach out to them since this is the second time that this has now been brought to our attention. And I don't think we didn't act on the first, like last month, we listened attentively. So maybe we can reach out to the superintendent and maybe just ask and see if there's what their thought process is, or what they think if, moving forward, because I think Ms. Serrano brings up very good, valid points as far as the parent network of this particular school and area.
Yeah, I think writing a letter of some sort is definitely one option that we have. Priscilla, one question I had for you. You may have not gotten any information about this from the leadership of the Archdiocese, but the financial challenges that the school was experiencing, do you have any sense of to what extent that was driven by under-enrollment, to what extent that was driven by delayed payment for pre-K3 and pre-K4 by New York City DOE, to what extent it was both, if there was a third major factor in the picture? What were sort of the fundamentals of the financial challenges?
Sure. So that's kind of driving some of the questions the parents have, right? So in regards to the only one piece of information that we do know that was stated was that our deficit for the school year was $570,000 for this school year alone, right? So not necessarily out of reach. From a fundraising perspective, when parents heard that, we were all eager to fundraise. I think it was an attainable goal that the parents and the community felt confident that we can reach. However, we prohibited fundraising at the moment until we had a conversation with the Archdiocese, one, to confirm that that is true deficit, and then what's the long-term approach, right? So we want to make sure as we fundraise that the fundraising does help keep the school open, right? So again, we have lots of alumni, parents, community members, angel sponsors that wants to help, with enrollment as well, right? So we got the two-pronged approach, whether it was the financial deficit and then also low student enrollment, right? So the Cardinal during this closure mentioned that for a Catholic school to stay open, they have to have at minimum 200 students. Well, we're at 213. So that was an alarm for us. Like, why did he make that statement publicly? And we know that our student body is 213 with a possible 50 applications pending for next year. So it couldn't possibly be, enrollment. And if it was, again, we have the community members willing to help with enrollment, angel sponsors, like on the back burners, we're just holding them off until we have this conversation with the Archdiocese, because ultimately that's where we're stalled. There's not much we can do without having any of our questions answered, having direct transparency of how we can support. Again, we were blindsided. We did not know this was even a thought on the table for the Archdiocese regarding art school. Again, we had some notice, the parents, we would have rallied together, problem solve. Again, we have I think a 14-page proposal of different options that what we can do to really keep the school open. We just need to be heard and sit down with them and to have that conversation and be transparent, because what we're hearing and then what our proposal is, there are some natural, bridges and opportunities that we can solve together, short-term and long-term, but without having that conversation, we're at a stalemate.
That's helpful. Thank you. And I have at least one more question, and then I'll give Katie a chance to ask her questions as well. It sounds like you tried to reach out to the Cardinal. who else have you all tried to engage so far? If we do write a letter, we want to make sure that we send it to the right person or people in sort of the leadership of the Archdiocese.
Sure. So the letter came from the superintendent, Michael Deegan. So we reached out to him. We also found out that he's actually retiring at the end of August. So, I'm not sure how much of, stake he has in the game. So we actually found his 2 new deputy superintendents. So we reached out to them. Mary Stenson, Michael Capoli, and then also, Timothy, the Archbishop Timothy Dolan, again, because he's been on the public record. So we reached out to him, as well as their communications, their PR department. So they're pretty much all on my email list on a weekly basis. So reaching out to all of them. Last week, we also, just so as we joined the meeting, or last month we joined the meeting, we did meet with Senator Brad Homan-Seigel on March 3rd. So we were able to connect with him. A few of us parents met with him, share with him the proposal, and he would be also working and supporting and trying to, write a letter and get his colleagues to sign it and get, again, a foot in the door with the Archdiocese. Because at this point, that's what we're asking, because ultimately all of our plans are null and void without having any communications without them.
Yeah. I'll pause for now, but thank you very much. It's all super helpful information. We'll go to Katie and then to Alan.
Thanks. I agree. This has been super helpful. And I guess, Priscilla, I was just wondering, from your perspective, what would be helpful that we could do? I mean, it sounds like what you all want is an in-person meeting. And then you said I think you'd said just a 1-year moratorium on the decision or something. So I'm just wondering, if we write a letter, would it be helpful for us to be supporting the idea of a 1-year moratorium or something? Anyway, what would be helpful?
It would be, right? So I think a 1-year moratorium would be absolutely helpful for us, because again, kind of our proposal is, 2-pronged, the short term and then the long term, right? Short term, what we need to do from a fundraising, student enrollment, but then being able to kick in those long-term plans. But that 1-year moratorium could really help us get on the right foot on saving the school on a long-term perspective.
Okay. And then just a quick follow-up. So would a letter from us supporting the moratorium and then also supporting an in-person meeting? I mean,
I think the in-person meeting is probably our priority. I think, again, I think there's certain questions as we dig into it. I think one of our parents have become private investigators at this point to understand the real estate, the land, the community, just all the different opportunities that the school can propose. I think having that conversation and having some open transparency with the Archdiocese. So I think having the meeting is probably the top priority with them.
Okay, thank you.
Alan?
Thanks, Priscilla. Both Kate and I live on 22nd Street around the corner from the school, so we both watch the kids and parents and everybody walking to the school. Given that the other 2 schools that they're recommending are pretty far out location-wise, would you have any handle in terms of how many, because I do see cars pulling up, and I'm sure there's some folks that do drop the kids off by car, but might be helpful to know how many of the families actually walk to school, a percentage or a number. I mean, if you don't know that right now, perhaps you can just check around and so we can have a handle as to how many kids would be affected by not being able to just walk to school.
Sure, I could definitely find out. I could put that numbers together. One thing I would know, and just I give an example of myself. I am a driver. I dropped my son off. However, the reason I chose that school, besides being an alumni, a lot of the family and a lot of the parents are actually alumni, and their caregivers, i.e., the grandmas, live in the neighborhood, right? So from a pickup perspective, that's where a lot of the community and the school sense of family is really really excels, because again, it's the community that really helps and pitches in. So while I'm a driver, my son gets picked up from walking from my mom, who lives in the NYCHA projects in Chelsea.
Right. Now, that's very helpful in terms of how we're going to frame the future letter out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
One more follow-up question, Priscilla, and then we have at least one hand in the attendees. Jesse, could you bring over Yadira Santillan? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So you said there's about 214 students, and if the website is correct, it's pre-K 3 through 8. So that's like roughly 20 kids per class. To the extent that you know, is there an imbalance in the enrollment? Are there way more kids in the, I'm making this up, UPK programming than there are in the 7th and 8th grade, or are the grades relatively evenly enrolled?
No, there are some heavier class sizes, right? So there's definitely some peaks and valleys. So it's really based, like, for example, my son in the 1st grade, he has a class of 18, which is probably one of the biggest class. So what I would say is, from a numbers perspective, yes, there's room to grow. However, our school, if you've been inside the school, there's only so much capacity. So there's only so much the school can grow. When I was attending, the average class size, each class was only one class, was about 20 to 22 students max. Again, not a far stretch from an enrollment if the parents were able to be involved and really help, get some angel fundraisers for the students in the community that can't afford it. So, or just additional opportunities for other student enrollments.
Thank you. Yadira, I don't know if you had a question or if you wanted to make a comment, but the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I honestly had raised my hand just to be here in support of Priscilla. Also an alumni from the school, class of 91, and my child also does attend currently Guardian Angel. We are actually one of the families who, as one of the board members had inquired about, walk to school. So the closure of this school, as Priscilla had mentioned, is the last remaining school in this community. It has, really has made a great upheaval in our lives, and will continue to do so, because there is nothing that is, there is no school that is convenient in terms of like commuting or even, financially equivalent to Guardian Angels, like yearly, the tuition, the current tuition. There's the financial implications, and then there's just the implications of just simply getting to accessing a school. If you want to stay, if you want to stay under like the parochial archdiocese schools or faith-based schools, or even if you want to transition over to a public school or charter school, being that there's such a great influx of children of current asylum seekers, as we have just heard during earlier in the meeting. So again, I just wanted to kind of just be here support if there were any additional questions, just to kind of provide additional information that Priscilla may have not included, but so far I've been listening, and she's been doing wonderfully, answering all the questions and details.
Well, we sincerely appreciate you both being here to share with us about the situation, answer our questions, and hopefully you see that we take this seriously and personally. If there aren't any other questions for these two, though, I'm going to ask Jesse to move you over to the attendees section, and we're going to shift into committee discussion, and to Leslie's point, talk about what are the next steps that the board might be able to take. So thank you again so much for coming and bringing this situation first to our attention, but then sharing much more about it and answering our questions around it. To frame this a little bit, I think we have a variety of options on the table. We could try to coordinate through Jesse or to sync up with Senator Hoylman's office and sort of try to combine forces, because it sounds like there's been some initial conversation there. We could write a administrative letter potentially, or we could vote on a regular letter to then go to full board next month. One thing I want to share, Alan mentioned that he and I both live very close to this school. It is a Catholic school. It is also a school that is the pre-K option for many families in our my family's direct vicinity, in large part because PS11 does not have enough seats in UPK3 or UPK4 to accommodate the neighborhood's need. And so when this school closes down, there's going to be a good number of families. Some of them are probably Catholic, but I know some who are not, who have chosen Guardian Angel for pre-K and are very happy with it, who were stunned by this news and don't have sort of an obvious walking distance solution for pre-K. So this is an issue that very much I think we should talk about in the lens that it's been brought to us. It's the last Catholic school on the West Side. It has a rich history and tradition, that's a big deal. But I just want to call out that also there are folks from different backgrounds, religiously or spirituously, who also depend on this school and think highly of it and are part of that community as well. Open it up to other folks to either entertain Leslie's suggestion. Katie had some other suggestions. Where should we take this next? Sabrina?
I'm sorry, I just have a question, and this is just pure ignorance. Is this school has a curriculum that's like Catholicism, or do they teach religion, or how does it work? And I didn't go to school in the US, so I'm not sure how Catholic school work here.
So I'm potentially not the best person to answer this. Anyone who went to Catholic school who wants to cut me off should. Go ahead, Leslie.
I'm not Catholic. I didn't go to Catholic school, but it's parochial, what it's called parochial. So it's run by the church, and there is definitely, I believe, Catholic teachings, but I don't want to speak for them, but it's also spiritual teachings. And I think Kit hit the nail on the head. Aurora, you might be able, I don't know if Aurora went to Catholic school, you might be better to speak at this.
Yeah, so I went to what is now Blessed Sacrament Upper Middle School, which was Sacred Heart at the time on 51st Street. So it's regular school, except you get religion class, and you have to wear a uniform. That's essentially it. And sometimes you're taught by nuns or brothers or priests.
Is that class optional, or it's mandatory?
No, in that school it is mandatory.
Okay, cool. That's
what you're actually paying for. And then if you want to go do any sacraments for Catholics,
and they prepare you for communion. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
You don't have to go through the extra steps of doing it.
Yeah, two things that I would add, Sabrina. There's multiple different governance structures that schools have in this country and in the city. District is the largest by far in terms of how many kids go to it. For us, that's New York City DOE or New York City Public Schools. Parochial, like Leslie said, that's religious schools. In New York City, the Archdiocese runs the Catholic schools, but there's also yeshivas, schools that are affiliated with other religions. And then there's in this state only nonprofit charters are legal. So there's independent standalone charters or networks of charter schools. And then the last operator type is independent schools. So being a Catholic school just means that they are a parochial school that is Catholic. And the thing that I would say is the UPK has to abide by the DOE's regulations and policies in order to operate a universal pre-K program. And so they are a Catholic school, but in those grade levels, at least, they are also meeting what are relatively rigorous standards for 3-year-old and 4-year-old education that are established by the city.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate all. Thank you for educating me.
David?
I'm a little confused. They're talking about shortage of money. The Vatican and the Archdiocese of New York have a lot of money. The Vatican is like the richest institution in the world. So they should be funding this. Why are we getting involved in funding when we have such few resources for public schools? I have nothing against Catholicism. I think they're great. I agree with the uniform. I agree a lot of what they do. But the point is the Vatican is, there's no one who has more money than the Vatican. That I know.
Jesse, can you get the Pope at our next meeting, please?
That'd be great. But you know what I'm saying. I don't know about the Archdiocese. I don't know their financial situation. to be honest with you. But I know that the Vatican has a lot of money, and that if they want to keep these schools open, then that's where they should be going to. That and not to a city or state, because we are a quasi city or state group.
Aurora, and then we'll go to Leslie and then to Alan.
Oh, I was just going to mention about the pre-K 3. Yeah, they have to, just back to Sabrina for a second. David, I find your comment really funny that you're talking about the Vatican. You're also talking about women in the Vatican. So I don't want to get too political here. But anyway, pre-K 3, you can they have to follow those guidelines by the city. But if you want to have Catholic instruction, you would have to pay for that. So that's how they kind of go around that loophole.
Thanks for adding that. Leslie and then Alan.
Dave, I don't know if this can be helpful, maybe. I don't think they're asking for funding. I don't think they're asking for public funding. I don't think they're asking for money from us. I think they just want us to be maybe a conduit or some sort of pipeline to bring people together for a conversation. And just, you know, it is a organization that's in our district. Organization. It is a school that's in our district. I think they just want us to maybe, since they're not getting Kit, do you think, or Alan, they just want us to hopefully maybe open a door of conversation.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Alan, do you want to go ahead?
They want us to twist their arm a little bit, basically.
All right. As the co-chair, I can't make a motion, but if someone, Priscilla is raising her hand. Would you mind bringing her back over, Jesse? Wouldn't want to not incorporate additional information she want to share, or if she wants to clarify anything that we may have misrepresented.
Sorry, I had raised my hands when the Sabrina had asked a question about the religion in class, but it's been answered. So yeah. But yes, just to clarify, we just need a foot in the door. That's all we're asking for.
Introduction. Cool. I would look favorably upon a motion that we write a Jesse, do you think this should be an administrative letter or a full-blown letter suggesting a meeting?
A meeting, I don't think you need a full-blown letter, because I think we want to move faster than a full board schedule for a meeting, right? And we don't necessarily have to be at that meeting. And we think it'd be great if we were, but like, again, I don't think it's imperative. It's imperative for the parents to be there. I think if you want to include a support for the moratorium or something more kind of significant, I think that would fall under a full board. And I don't know if you want to do that based off of this conversation or based off of the conversation that you guys would hope to have with a member of the Archdiocese coming to this committee or that meeting. And basing it off of that, so you kind of have more information, but that's up to you guys. So that's helpful, I think.
So can I just ask a quick follow-up to that, Jesse?
Sure.
So, in a way, could we do two things? Like, could we have a motion to vote to have an administrative letter asking for a meeting?
Yep.
And vote to have a letter that then would go to full board supporting a one-year moratorium based on some of the details we've heard this evening, like the fact that there's, the universal pre-K and people don't know where to go. And because they had so little notice, it would just be hard for them to make decisions and things. So, I mean, could we I guess technically, could we do both?
You listen, I don't think if you're doing a letter, a full board letter with all of that, I think you should just include it into that full board letter, I guess. I mean, we can make a request. I mean, the administrative letter is not, necessarily could be an email or it can be an official letter. That's fine. But I think if you guys want to if you want to write a full board letter, based off of the information you guys have heard today, that's your prerogative for sure. And I think in that, if you would like to say, I think the request for the meeting is not necessarily the meeting with us. Right. The parents are asking for them to meet, for the parents to meet. So I think
we just want to support that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly could keep, like I think someone said, work with the existing, if Brad Hoyleman's office is taking the lead, and I'll reach out to Brad's office and let him know that we're supportive of that and we want to push and however we can do to be helpful to get that meeting for the parents. But if we want to say more, yes, I think that would be a full board. That's a letter that needs to go to full board, and we're asking an institution to stop a significant financial and operational action that they've declared. So I think that would require a full board review.
Yeah, I would almost like to separate the two, because the meeting between the parent community and the leadership of the Catholic Church, that hopefully can happen pretty quickly, and that should be the administrative letter. If we also want to take the stance now or at a later time that we oppose the decision to close the school, or we think there should be a moratorium or something else, we can also do that. But I don't personally feel that I have the level of information that I would feel comfortable making that statement yet. I do absolutely think that the parent community should get to meet with the folks who have made this decision. Alan, and then David.
So I think time is pretty much of the essence here, because April gets voted on. They're planning on closing the schools down at the end of the year, which is June, a couple of months from now. So I think the initial letter should involve what we heard today. The community base, I think Yadira made a tremendous point in terms of what, and I'm sure this goes for a lot of other schools, but I guess you kind of have to fall on your knees a little bit in front of them, and sort of play on the fact that this has been a community school for 100 years. Multiple generations have gone there. What the impact would be, I don't know how long we can push out an administrative letter where it doesn't become something that has to be voted on, but I think we need to get something that has some punch to it out, and just reiterate what they've probably already heard already. I'm sure the parents have made this pitch to the archdiocese about what's happening, what's going to happen to the families that rely on this school. So maybe coming from our committee and going also to some electeds, maybe there's some pressure that can be put on to get them to come to the table. So I would say let's put as much as we can into an administrative letter and go from there.
Thanks, Alan. David, and then Aurora, and then Leslie, and then maybe we can sort of summarize what we think is going into hopefully an administrative letter.
I'm a little confused. At this meeting that with the Archdiocese, will we or some of the elected be at that meeting? Because if we're at that meeting and also the electeds, then we could get our point across, and we wouldn't necessarily, we can hold off on the administrative letter for a temporary, or we could put, because we don't want to block ourselves or whatever. We don't know what the Archdiocese is going to say. They might turn around and change their opinion if there's someone from the electeds, whether it's Hoyleman, Botcher, or Tony Simone at the meeting, they might change. I don't know. I don't know enough about the internal politics of the Archdiocese of New York City. And, if we start writing a letter before we have this meeting, then you're writing something before the negotiations have even begun. So
David, just to clarify, the Archdiocese up to this point has not agreed to meet with the parents who are trying to organize. So the main thrust of the letter is that the Archdiocese should meet with them. That's the whole thing in the letter.
So, okay. So would we be part of the meeting with the parents? I think that would help, or one, or someone from the elected representatives. That might help. And if we send this letter to the Archdiocese, I hope this doesn't sound too crazy. I apologize in advance, but we should also CC someone in the Vatican. Not that anyone from the Vatican is going to do anything, but when the Archdiocese sees that, they're going to go, holy S.
Our postage costs go way up if we see
No,
someone in the
CCing
Vatican.
on the computers, not on. But I'm just saying, because it's sometimes it's more important if they see it rather than what really action's going to happen.
We can figure out who should be CC'd on an admin letter for sure. Well, I think that's certainly something we can figure out post. So yeah.
Aurora and then Leslie.
David, I love how like how much you care about this. And Kit, I was going to say, it sounds like you want to separate church and state, but that was just my attempt at a bad joke. But as far as the letter, I think you need to come at it like as a procedure kind of letter, because, you know, procedure matters. These parents didn't get a chance to apply to their local public schools on time. So they closed their current school and you're outsourcing them to another archdiocese school that's like well over a mile out of their zone area. And then they didn't even have an opportunity to apply to a local public school.
Thank you for that. Leslie? And then I don't see any other hands, so you might have the final word here before we try to summarize what's going into this administrative.
Well, actually, I was gonna, that's what I was gonna talk about, points going to the letter, but I do want to say maybe we should CC the Vatican, because I would love to see Jesse's face when he gets a response from the Vatican and he can frame that letter in the CB4 office. But my only thing was, it was points on the letter. So if you want me to wait, it wasn't further discussion. It was maybe some inclusions in the letter.
No, go for it. It was
Okay.
your idea initially to have a letter.
Okay, I only had one thing, and you guys can, I guess, talk about further details, but I don't think we should ask the superintendent or acting superintendent to meet with the parents, because then I think they're not accountable to any, you know, they're already getting requests from parents to meet with them. I think we should ask as the community board, like say, we would like you to respond to us. Can you tell us what's going on? Can you just give us an update on it? Because if we say, hey, go meet with the parents, whether they do or not, you know, I don't know if they'll respond to us saying, yeah, sure, we'll meet with them, or no, we won't. I think that, you know, there should be some sort of language where they should kind of hopefully, cross fingers, be forced to write back to respond to us, just so we could see, like, hey, you know, we're the community board. This is what we do. This is in our district. We're interested in the school closing. Can you please give us a little more clarification? We know the parents are trying to speak with you, and we don't know if that has happened yet. Hopefully we can facilitate. You know, please let us know the status, and then all the other points that you guys talked about.
I was thinking we would handle it differently. The parent community of Guardian Angel, if they would like to invite us to a meeting that ultimately gets scheduled, I think that should be a decision that's up to them. But ultimately, they are, in a real way, the constituents of the Archdiocese. We're talking about folks who've identified themselves not just as people who currently send their kids to a school that's getting closed, but alums. And it sounds like people who are actively involved in the Catholic community here in the city. I think there's a lot, I would imagine, more accountability to folks like that than there is to a, you know, advisory legislative group below city council with absolutely no authority over the Archdiocese.
No, yes, but they haven't gotten any, that I think they're coming to us because they haven't gotten any response, and they've been asking and asking and asking. And I think they're using another avenue to hopefully push it. And, I think if there is saying, you know, hey, you know, we heard their concerns, can you please respond to us? I mean, I think that avenue is, they've been trying to do that. And I think to no avail. So this is kind of plan B, maybe. it doesn't hurt to say, hey, can you just tell us what's going on, right? I mean, we're not asking for a meeting with them. It's just more like, can you just fill us in? Can we,
I'd be very comfortable with us asking for them to share back with us how the meeting went, or share with us, the answers to the very valid questions that I think the parents are raising. I think what I heard from the parents that showed up tonight was they want a foot in the door for a meeting for themselves. And so that's what I would encourage us to advocate for. But I do like the idea of including some language in there around, and please share back with the community board, like what is going on here? Because when we have all the information, who knows how different people will feel about the ultimate decision that was made. For me, at least, there's a very real possibility that it is financially impossible for that school to continue to operate. I don't know. But it does feel like it is absolutely within what's reasonable that there be a meeting and there be a conversation and very basic questions be answered about how we got here. And so that's what I hope we can help them to discuss. Aurora, was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Kit, and I also hear what Leslie's saying, and I wonder if there's anybody actually on our subcommittee or on our board that either has a child that is attending a Holy Angels or was going to enroll their child in like their pre-K program that could kind of act as a liaison between our two boards, like between the parent committee and also the community board. Also, I think we should CC this Cardinal. I think we have better odds with him.
Well, I mean, I'll just speak to the first point. Or I mean, I'm happy to. I mean, I'm not sending my child there, but but I'm happy to continue the conversations with Priscilla and the other and Yadira who came tonight, and we've been in touch since they've come to the full board to speak out on this, which was the first time I think was brought to the board's attention officially. So I'm happy to continue that conversation, and I'm sure they'll keep us informed. And if there's a specific request that that electeds are included in the meeting, and if we want to be at that meeting, that's fine. That's up to them. And but that we can certainly keep in touch, and I'm sure they would love to let us know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that what I was hearing when they were talking was a little bit of they don't feel like their voices are being heard enough, and that's why they're coming to the community board. They need something a little heavier to push the archdiocese instead of the archdiocese pushing them. And I think that was kind of, I don't want to talk to you, Leslie, but I think that's what I was kind of hearing you say too. But we don't want to obviously, impose on them. So that's why I was wondering if there was a parent who wanted to enroll their child there that could act as this facilitator maybe.
Jesse,
your idea sounds great too.
And if there's someone who'd like to take that role on, that'd be great.
Well, if someone would like to take that role, and I also agree would be great, you can let yourself be known to Jesse or to me or to Alan, but there's also someone in the attendees who's raising their hand. Jesse, do you mind finding out what?
Yep.
Let me try to summarize where I think we are, which is administrative letter, sharing the community board's concerns with the way in which the parent community and the broader community of Guardian Angel was informed that the school would not be continuing after this year, locked families out of the opportunity to make a decision about another school because those processes had concluded, lack of transparency about the finances that are driving the decision, and just insufficient explanation around the rationale, given that they are over the number of students that they had been told would be the floor for decisions around school closures. We want to strongly encourage the leadership of the church to meet with these families as soon as possible and discuss the school situation. We're open to attending that meeting along with local elected officials if it would be helpful. And we ask that the outcome of the meeting and what is discussed be reported back to us. Does that all sound okay?
Move to support whatever Kit just said. It was said beautifully, Kit, even though you can't make the motion.
I second it, or I motion it. Motion.
Ditto to Kit.
Yeah.
I'm all on board.
Jesse, were we able to get Diana over?
I asked her to come over and she didn't decline. I don't know if she's. Oh, here she comes.
Let's just make sure that if this is on this topic, we hear it before we move on to old business. Hi, Diana. If you are able to come off mute, we just wanted to check in with you since you had your hand raised and make sure that it was on this topic. You had a chance to say what was on your mind before we move on.
Yes. Hi, thanks. Sorry about that. I saw that little message, but just a comment. I think it was Aurora before she said it. I was going to, when you're talking about dealing with the archdiocese, it sounds like are they dealing with a particular person? My suggestion, she mentioned the Archbishop, so that was the first thing that came to my mind, is to perhaps reach out directly to Cardinal Dolan. He is a very down-to-earth guy, and maybe perhaps he can't solve the problem, but he might be able to give some guidance as to where to go or what his knowledge is about it. I just think he's very approachable, and he might be someone to maybe start with him before you head to the big guy in Rome. That's all I wanted to suggest.
Thanks, Diana. And just for our understanding, what's your connection to Guardian Angel, if you have one?
Oh, I have just I came on to see what was going on with other stuff, and that subject came up. So I went to Incarnation in Hollis, Queens, but that was a long time ago.
Okay. Wonderful.
So I don't have a direct
Appreciate it.
connection.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Just a comment, that's all. Thanks.
Comments well taken. Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
All right. Let's make sure that we include Cardinal Dolan on the administrative letter that I summarized. Let's quickly vote on it. All in favor? David and Mercedes, all on board. Mercedes, I see a hand. All right, anyone opposed?
I'm in favor. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Any abstentions? Any present, not eligible? All right, Jesse.
I have a question. Who am I chasing down to get the draft of this administrative letter?
That was going to be my next question. I see a hand.
I'm not
around.
frozen. I'm just still smiling.
I can try to do this.
If
Okay.
you would take the lead, it would be greatly appreciated. Is
Yeah.
there anyone who wants to take a look at it and offer suggestions for edits? Alan?
Thank you, Alan.
Fantastic. All right,
Fantastic.
seems like a great writing team. So we'll close that topic out, but also if we want to revisit an actual regular letter that would be voted on full board, we can add that in April or May or whenever we think is necessary. Jesse, it sounded like there was a old business item that you wanted to make sure that we circle back to.
No, I just wanted to give a couple updates because we had a couple things that came up as at the beginning of last meeting and then circled back at the end of last meeting. We had a third discussion. One of them was the issues that what Sabrina raised of the possible increase or just seeing a consistency of, I think I wanted to, if I describe this wrong, Sabrina, you'll tell me, of school age children vending, in and around the subways. And so I have done my due diligence and I'm not completely there yet. But I think we've hit on, or Sabrina's hit on, a particular population of folks that don't necessarily have, there's no one really tracking that. And so I've spoken to MTA, I've spoken to BRC, who does homeless outreach in and around the subways. I do have a connection with NYPD Transit that I'm still following up with, and I still want to talk to DOE Truancy. But from what I understand, and they give me sort of a breath around it, that there's not really anybody that's specifically looking at it from, I think, the concern that I think Sabrina was raising. And so I will continue to, if I get someone who's going to tell me, oh yeah, we have someone working on that issue, I will circle back on that. But basically, I think it's right now it's always, as we were concerned about when we brought it up, it is simply seen as a vending NYPD vending issue, and so that's not the route we are looking to take. And so but I will continue on. And then I just wanted to also circle back on the issue that I think Blake and Charlie wanted to talk about, or at least one of the subsections of one of the topics that the Street Life Committee is talking about, which is the mounted unit issues and so have not gotten much progress on that, but I have found the right person to talk to, at least at the mounted unit. And so I will continue our phone tag, but he seems open to having conversations. So.
Thank you, Jesse. Can I actually follow up with you? Just because, again, all of what I've been doing is just observing. I haven't seen, maybe I've seen one or twice over the last meeting that we had, kids selling candy.
Yeah, no, feel free. I just wanted to follow up.
It was like a thing of that moment. I mean, but I haven't. All I've seen now is like I've seen maybe 2 or 3 times. It's mothers with babies.
That's what I've seen mostly too.
Yeah,
Me
but
too.
The kids,
Yep.
you too. Okay, so the kids have like, I haven't seen 0, like none of them. Okay. Again, I'll continue to keep observing.
No, it's
questions.
Yeah, no, I understand.
My own sanity.
Yep, sure. I just didn't want to lose. We had spent a good amount of time on it last meeting, so I didn't want us to.
No, I appreciate you
circle back on
doing research about it.
Yep. That's all I have to report.
Thank you.
Actually, can I ask a question? And this, because I know, Jesse, you had forwarded to us today a response to the letter we voted on at the last meeting.
Yeah.
I just don't have a sense. Like, is there a tradition or a process? Like, can we respond to a response, or do we tend not to do that?
Do you mean the board, or do you mean does the committee want to respond to that? That we'll call it a response. Let's call it a response. I wouldn't call an official. I had a lot of problems with that response, but
yeah.
I think if you guys as a committee want to respond to that's fine. I think unless you feel like I guess it's based off of what your response wants to be, but I think we could probably shift that over to an admin situation, so we're not getting into a back and forth on a full board level unless there's something specific about that. But I think we can certainly respond to that response. And we'll put ours on letterhead and sign it.
Yeah. So is that something that we could propose and just then vote on here? Would be just like we did earlier, like an administrative response to their response. I don't know what to call it.
That is up to the prerogative of this committee.
Alan, did you want to say something about it? Oh.
I think Alan's frozen.
I want to ask something about it. What response letter are we talking about? 'Cause
Oh,
didn't-
I think, well, it just came in
Well,
today. This is
I
about the
apologize. I
principal.
don't think I didn't say, I
Oh.
apologize, Katie. I didn't send this to everybody. We just got it today. It was a, the superintendent for high schools for DOE responded to our letter that we wrote on behalf of the High School for Environmental Studies. And just wrote a paragraph long email. So I can send that around to everybody. I apologize. This was just happening in real time.
Yeah,
I
mean,
can you hear me?
Yep.
So what I wanted to say is perhaps we want to maybe touch base with the school first. I think they were CC'd on this. Somebody, I think Greenblatt wasn't the school CC'd on this as well? I think before we start.
I think he
making-
responded to my email, which I was sending that to DOE. I copied a bunch of folks from the few contacts that I have had with DOE. So I think he just responded to that. I mean, when you say the school, do you mean the PTA or do you mean the principal?
No, the PTA. No, I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
We
happy
should
to
give them a
follow
chance
up with the principal. I mean, the PTA.
Yeah, and see how they want to play this. You know, they may have some other ideas going.
I think that's a good suggestion. I think forwarding it to the PTA and checking in with them before we do any sort of formal response makes sense. But I do think having just read it, it leaves something to be desired. And so I don't know if it's another small group meeting with some subsection or all of the education folks in the PTA, or if it's bringing the PTA back to our April meeting. I think we should talk about how we want to respond to the response. I think we should connect with the PTA before taking any other steps.
I can do that, and I will include if the subgroup, if you want to do the whole subgroup, or if you want to do this, the folks who wrote the letter, however you want to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I do think, I mean, it's my recollection is, or yeah, my memory is that it's the letter we got and is almost identical to the email the superintendent sent the PTA members, which is just like, oh, she has my full faith. It's all fine.
Yeah. Just there was more flourish in it.
Josephine?
I think that we should still reach out to the superintendent for a meeting because we, have never had the opportunity to introduce ourselves, tell them what the community board does, and try to have some sort of working relationship with this person, even though, so the result is not what we wanted at this point. But we do have other things that we can discuss with him. In our education committee, we talked about some other issues that people wanted to see or to ask about. So I think that this would be a good starting point to at least request a meeting with him. And I don't know if Jesse, that requires an admin letter, or if we can just send him an email. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
and we would take if he can come to our committee meeting or a smaller meeting if he would prefer, that it's not on camera, an offline meeting.
Alan, curious to get your thoughts, but my instinct is, Josephine, if you're comfortable reaching out to him and asking for a meeting, I think an initial smaller group meeting is a more constructive setting in many senses. And we can, in parallel, try to connect with him for all the reasons you just said. I do think having a relationship with him would be beneficial in the long run. But also not necessarily take a stance specifically on next steps with the High School for Environmental Sciences until we have a sense of how the PTA there would like to move forward. Does that sound okay, Alan and Josephine?
Yeah,
sounds good to me. Sure.
I agree. I won't even at this point mention the other issue until we hear back from the school. But Jesse, I would like to have your help on this because they respond better when Jesse reaches out. So I could just give you, maybe one or two things that we talked about the education committee, that why we would like to speak to him as a starting point, because we do want to have that meeting anyway.
That's not a problem at all. I think I'll just ask. I think what would help is a couple lines or a couple bullet points of those things that we do want to talk about. So then when I respond to him, we're we can say we'd love to talk to you about these things, thank you for responding, but here's the things that we would love to meet on. And so that, I think that'd be helpful. But yeah, that's not a problem. We should definitely set that up. And I agree, a smaller meeting. I think the meetings you guys have with in the past, the meetings you've had with the superintendents, either alone or with a superintendent and a gaggle of principals, has been really effective in understanding what's the broader needs of the district. And so I think that's a good model to start with, and then, go from there.
I agree. I just wanted to also, are you, I think you said you were going to follow up the DOE on the adult education programming?
I'd have to,
it's a hard one, I know. I keep getting bounced around all over the place.
Well, I wouldn't even mind one bounce, Josephine, honestly. I'm not even getting any follow-up. So I'm struggling with this particular agency right now to find somebody who can consistently respond to emails and requests for this committee to meet with them. And so both unfortunately from DOE and SCA. I think it's a broader issue, of course, I think of staffing, but I think you still have the ability to respond to emails and provide some level of, response. So.
Okay, the last I heard was that District 75 might be able to provide something. But the point is that we have, as you all know, so many parents or, asylum seekers who want to learn English. You have to learn in order to get any kind of work or do anything. And it's really hodgepodge at this point. We have some things happening at the Skyline, PS 51. There's some things happening at that school. I've reached out to Columbia. They said that they could maybe possibly do a course in another public school, but did not seem very excited about the idea of doing it in the shelter. So it's just kind of all over the place. And it would just be nice to have someone from the DOE sort of talk about, what's available exactly and how should someone go about it.
Josephine, it is my quest.
Okay, I know, Jesse. Thank you.
The last 4 weeks has been my quest to get this, and so I will. And not only because of that, but just a consistent person that I can talk to about, the list of things that we come up with. I mean, Leslie came up with a bunch of education stuff a while ago too, that I'm still on the burner because I'm trying to have at least a conversation with somebody. So it's been just that difficult, but I will continue to do that. I will not let it go. I promise you that.
Thank you.
Just ask a related question to that, Jesse. And I don't know again how this works. I mean, I know that we'd heard that the person at the Skyline is from adult ed, but how they got it. But I do know that took a while. But I guess my question is, I had just randomly Googled, Spanish, or ESL classes in our district. And there are some private places that do it. I just wondered, would it ever be worth it to contact them and see if, I don't know, the city or somebody could sponsor some of their instructors coming in to do it? Do we ever do sort of public-private partnership? I don't know, something. Sorry to be so inarticulate.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually Josephine and Leslie were the successful group. You guys did a successful combination of that, I think, during COVID, right? With student teaching and things like that, the student teachers that you connected. I mean, I think we just need we need to understand the connection. I just, like I said, I just don't know who I'm telling them to talk to. Am I telling them to talk to DOE? Am I telling them to talk to health and hospitals? Who's my partner, right? I mean, again, I'm not, and if you all know, then please tell me.
I think it's the New York Public Library. They have a program, or they did, I don't know, you can double check, but I remember being part of it, and it's called English as a Foreign Language. And the base of the program comes out of 42nd Street and 5th Avenue.
Right, I think
that they're very limited.
Yeah. At the last meeting, it's just so limited. That's the problem. So
let me just finish. The base of the program is supposed to come out of there, and they're supposed to be able to provide those services into individual libraries. And so I worked with them before. I actually worked for them before. And when you complete the course at the very finale, you should be able to like excel. And I believe the last time I checked in with them, Columbus Library was one of their host spots, or they were supposed to be, or they were like something was in the works with Columbus because it was on the west side and they were housed on the east side, and the other one was on the east side as well. Anyway, I think it's New York Public Library.
I mean, you're right about that. It is New York Public Library, and there are several branches doing different things. If one person wants to research and do a list of the branches, and
I'm just giving
right.
Okay.
No, I understand that, but and I'm just saying that if one
That's it.
person wanted to do that, and I think we even talked about this at the last meeting and pass this information along to the shelters, I think that could be a start and could be helpful. But it's just something that someone would have to want to take on. That's all. And the same thing with Katie's, with they're private, and it would be so nice if they would just step up and say something or reach out instead of us having to do all this picking here and research here. And, we all only have so much time. And that's why I keep going back to the DOE, because we need some large organization to help us. But, if anybody wants to look into the private, organization, I mean, the private companies that teach in English and want, see if they want to donate some of their time or their teachers in this effort, that would be extremely helpful. Somebody would have to volunteer to do it. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And then what I was saying as well is the New York Public Library, why would I reinvent the wheel? They already have it in place. Then you could just execute it in a location or have them come to the shelters. Either way, I was just suggesting that. I don't know. That was my thought.
I'm happy to, I don't know. I don't know if this is helpful. I don't know if this is what I'm about to say is helpful, but I'm happy to do the due diligence of following up with the library to see what their capacity is of being able to distribute their resources, to the areas that I think we at least know of in our district that could use it. I'm happy to find out what at all DHS and Health and Hospitals knows what's happening there and what if they're doing anything, and to see what there is, and that's certainly what I can do.
Is it possible that if have a connection at the New York Public Library, that they could come to our next committee meeting and talk, give us firsthand account on what they're doing?
I certainly can. We had them just a few months ago when to come and speak about the Columbus branch and specifically about the major capital renovation that they need. So we certainly know the manager, and we can talk to the manager who's there, and obviously someone from New York Public Library Central, and see specifically about that. So I think we can do that. For sure. And I'll keep on plugging away at DOE if we want to. I will continue to try to make this an agenda item, and we'll have the library and hopefully have the library and DOE there. If there's anybody else that people think they would like to try to include, then I think they could let me know, and I will try to do that as well.
So nobody immediately jumped in. So I'll just say quickly, I think that is a good starter list. If we want to invite the New York Public Library back, let's offline come up with sort of what are the new things that we want them to discuss, because they did cover their programming that supports learning as an English as a second language or as a new language last time they came. And so wouldn't want to invite them back to rehash that. And then just one quick footnote, Jesse. I think it's both like what is your capacity to support learning English, but also like how are you advertising that specifically to the folks who are new to the country and in the shelters. Would also be really healthy to inquire about. And I think if we start with that list, we can push that issue forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jessica.
So I think the other thing I'll just do is reach out to the health and hospitals, because they run the HERCs, which are really kind of the central asylum seeking, units that have a lot of support services attached to them. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is clearly something that they hear about and want to do and need to do something about. And so I'm sure they might even have, like Aurora is saying, let's probably have a wheel that they're already working with. Maybe it needs to be expanded, and maybe DHS doesn't have it, and that's the issue. So we'll figure it out.
Maybe it's piecemealing it where different agencies are working with different, populations or age groups or shelters. But I think if we reach out to those different folks and you continue to be politely persistent, eventually we'll get somewhere. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Katie. Anyone who agrees with her, you can show that by signing off. Thank you, everybody. I hope everyone has a great evening. We will see you same time, same place next month. Have a good evening.
Good night, all.